So today we're talking about a hot topic. We're talking about local food. And I wanted to dig into some of these terms around local food because they sound really good and they sound really easy, but I found out that maybe they're not as easy as we think. Things like farm to table. That concept, while we all want it and we all support it, maybe we don't quite understand how difficult that can be. I find that people are very, very concerned about where their food comes from. We field a lot of these questions in the shop. So I wanted to dig in. I'm involved currently in a program where I'm going to become a food fellow and be a voice for local food, but I wanted to take it a step further and make sure I fully understood what my responsibility will be. Today, we talk with John Cotton-Dean. He works for the Central Louisiana Economic Development Authority, CLEDA, and he is heading up this effort to train folks like me to be local food advocates. And then I took it another direction and sat down with local farmer. She's a local urban farmer, Allison Guidroz, and she helped us understand the challenges for local farmers. This episode is definitely informative and insightful, but you're going to get some really good inspiration here too. One of the things that came up is embracing what's abundant at the time, and we've got eggplant coming out of our ears right now. We grabbed all that eggplant and we're going to cook up eggplant burgers with my favorite sidekick, Cameron. And Cameron was a non-eggplant eater. He was not there for it, but we turned him right around with these burgers. You do not want to miss that. My name is Ann Milneck. I own Red Stick Spice Company. I call myself the tireless champion of home cooks, and this is my podcast, Smidgen.
You're listening to Smidgen, the Red Stick Spice Company podcast located directly between a dash and a pinch, where it's all about the tips, tricks, and tools to make home cooking easy and doable. We did our research, and it's proven. Mealtime's where it's at. And now your host, Ann Milneck.
Today, I'm talking with John Cotton-Dean, Rural Prosperity Initiative and Business Retention and Expansion Director for the Central Louisiana Economic Development Alliance, also known as CLEDA. Among John's long list of duties with CLEDA, he is tasked with running the Sustainable Agriculture Fellows Program, a program that I'm currently enrolled in. John is guiding me and my class of food fellows in becoming change agents in Louisiana's local food system by enhancing our understanding of sustainable agriculture through broad-based and hands-on exposure. Welcome, John.
Yeah, thank you.
That intro was a mouthful. In your words, what is a food fellow?
So to me, a food fellow is a local food leader. You know, it's somebody who can walk into any community, but especially the community that they live, they have roots, they have connections, they have a network, and they can change their community for the better through local food. Whether that's building a stronger farm that incorporates a community structure, whether that's leveraging their farmers market to incorporate more community programming, but really it's about uniting the people, the neighbors of the community, everybody who lives there, all the citizens around local food, and really transforming a rural economy through local food.
I was chosen to be part of the Food Fellows class of 2019. And I assumed when I arrived, I was going to be in a room with farmers and maybe like farmers market directors. There are those folks in the room, but it's a lot more diverse than that. Describe some of the folks in the room with me.
You know, you have representatives from LSU Ag Center who are extension agents who work directly with farmers. You do have some farmers still, but you're right. It's mostly going to be folks who just want to be a leader, whether that's in their professional work, such as, you know, through LSU Ag Center, through their farmers market. But you're also going to have folks who want to find a place in their community where they can be a leader, where they can find their niche. So you have folks who represent Native American communities in Louisiana. You have people who, you know, represent economic development agencies, farmers market managers, and really anybody who sees value in local food as a way to leverage community resources and just build stronger community around local food. So what I love about Louisiana Food Fellows, and this is, your cohort is as diverse as any cohort we've ever had, probably more diverse. But throughout the past 5 years when we started the program, we've had high school students, we've had retirees, we've had USDA employees, we've had lots of farmers, We've had farmers market managers, folks who just have gardens in their backyard. We've had folks who have no relationship to food whatsoever, but are looking for opportunities to grow as leaders. And so just the diversity in the room, there's nothing that I've seen like it in Louisiana. And really for a national model, it's really unique.
And we are the fourth class coming out of Louisiana, correct?
No, the fifth class.
Okay, so you've graduated 5 classes.
We've graduated 4 already, so y'all will be the fifth.
We'll be the fifth.
Yep.
Okay, and we're going to be the best.
Absolutely.
I feel a little bit like odd man out in the room simply because I live in the world of retail. And most of the folks I speak with on a daily basis, and I teach cooking classes and I take people on farm tours. These are folks who, for the most part, have no barriers to access when it comes to food. A lot of my fellow food fellows are working with populations that are very vulnerable and do have significant barriers. And one term that keeps coming up is a food desert. Can you describe what that is? And, we talk to folks all over the country, all over the world, but are there food deserts around me in Louisiana?
Absolutely. So, there's different definitions of a food desert. The USDA has their own definition of a food desert. But really a food desert in kind of the simplest terms is an area where people live where they do not have easy access to fresh and healthy food. So, for example, if you live in a community in a small rural town that does not have a grocery store and you might have to drive 12, 20 miles to the closest store that sells fresh produce, you're in a food desert. If you live in a more urban environment and you can't walk to your closest store that sells fresh and healthy food, you have no public transportation access, you're in a food desert. And so Louisiana is full of food deserts. That's really what folks a lot of times will forget is, not everybody has easy access to a grocery store. And especially when you look into some of the more rural environments, if you don't have personal transportation, you're going to struggle. And so there's going to be barriers for folks across the spectrum in Louisiana who do not have access to healthy, fresh food, especially when we start talking about produce.
Some of my classmates are working in programs specifically directed toward food deserts. And so when I think about fresh local food in my world, that's on Thursdays and Saturdays at the farmers market. And then a lot of my grocery stores carry it. For those folks in my class who are working with connecting these folks with fresh local food, does that look like a farmer's market or does it look like something different?
Yeah. So, access to fresh food can look different no matter where you are. And so oftentimes people think farmers markets are the only way to go to increase access to healthy local food, but we've seen in other parts of the country and other parts of the state, that's not just farmers markets. Farmers markets can be an incredible opportunity to build, wealth around and increase access to healthy food, especially when you start incorporating programs like, what we might call food stamps or EBT. But it's not just farmers markets. It's working with, grocery stores and retail and trying to incentivize those stores. It might even just be a gas station to offer to have fresh produce, to have healthy food in those retail environments too. So, farmers markets are one avenue for fresh, healthy food. So is retail. Again, the thing about food fellows is that so many people before they're food fellows look at local food from a very kind of narrow perspective. That might just be retail. That might just be farmers markets. That might just be community gardens. Might just be food hubs, which is kind of a buzzword. But really, what the leaders in the local food movement know that the movement and increasing access to healthy local food, it takes a system. It takes a whole ecosystem. And it takes an ecosystem of partners to make that happen too. So it can't just be a farmer's market. It can't just be a retail environment. It can't just be cooking at home. It can't just be restaurants. It has to be everything. And so that's really where the battle lies, is figuring out, hey, what works best for this community? Is it going to be a farmer's market? Are the farmers that sell at the market going to make enough money? in this community? Are there some barriers that we can break at current farmers markets that would increase participation by low-income residents in those communities to come to the farmers market and purchase food? What can we do to bridge those gaps? And what are some things that we can do to bring fresh food to places where people are already going? That's one challenge too, is you're asking people to change their habits.
Right.
Which is asking a lot. And so I've always been a big proponent of, we're winning if we can start getting local food into places that people are already going. That to me is a tangible outcome that we can focus on, but that's a really hard thing to do. And farmers markets help us get there, but they're not just the only answer.
Well, I love what you just said, because I was talking to my store manager about what I'm doing here, and I was trying to explain it. And I said, I thought I understood this whole local food thing, but I realized that maybe I got it wrong. And what you're saying is I didn't get it wrong, that I just need to think bigger and probably broader and wider, and that I am a cog in that wheel as a retailer who teaches cooking classes and takes folks on farm tours. But there's a lot more to it, to that whole community that you said, than what I thought it meant to support local food. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, as soon as you think you have the right solution, you're almost on the wrong path, because that solution is part of, it's not just the solution, it's part of everything else. And so that's what it takes to be a leader is understanding that, this is just a stepping stool to filling all the gaps within the system. And it's complicated. What we can do as local food leaders is really appreciate the complexity. First of all, know that we don't have all the answers, and really understand that we need to figure out what our niche is and how we can really help fill the gaps within the ecosystem, determine who our partners are to fill those gaps. And again, taking that systemic approach to the challenge of increasing access to healthy food for everybody.
Then when I take folks on a farm tour, so we have a great customer base that we head out on a Saturday and we go visit some local farms and we stop at the farmer's market, and then we come back and cook what we bought. And these are folks who have no barriers to access of local food. And what I'm doing looks like agritourism. What can I do on that tour to make sure I'm a good steward of this system and I'm doing my job as a food fellow?
I think if you're taking folks there who may not have barriers and are just kind of there to learn about farmers and
have
kind
fun.
Of, and have fun, right? And I think something that we run across here at CLEDA, at our organization, is we have lots of events. We have a Foodapalooza, an annual local food summit. And I always challenge folks, this is going to be a fun day. You're going to learn tons. You're going to meet farmers. You're going to have a great time. But it can't end today. You have to take what you've learned and take that home with you. It's a challenge. This isn't just a TV show. You have to take what you've learned and act upon it. And so the folks that you take on those tours, it's imperative that they are there not just because it's fun, but because what can they do when they leave that farm to share with their neighbors? Can they talk about the struggles of farmers? It's easy to go to a farm and see how beautiful it is and look at all the great products that are being produced there, whether it's, vegetables or it's meat or dairy, but understanding the challenges that those farmers are facing too. And so having those really tough conversations might spark some questions for your group when you're there. And I think that's also part of the farmer's job too, is don't sugarcoat it and really talk about how difficult being a farmer really is, and getting the folks that you're taking on this tour to really appreciate how challenging being a farmer really is. And it's not just, when you go to a farmer's market, it's not just eggs. Eggs aren't $5 a dozen just because the farmer wants to make more money. It's because that's how much it's going to cost for them to cover their feed for the chickens. And they're not making any more money than that. So really having those tough conversations. And again, it's fun and they can still have a great time, but really challenging them at the same time, I think is kind of a great role for a food fellow.
It makes me think of one of our farm tours where it was raining. And we immediately started getting calls that morning of whether or not the tour was going to run. And one customer said, should we check in with Allison Guidroz, who runs Fullness Farms with her husband? Should we check in with Allison and make sure it's okay for us to come in the rain? And she was like, we farm, whether it's raining or not. And we took that farm tour with umbrellas and our rubber boots on, and it allowed the customer to see that, that this work goes on no matter what the weather is like. I'd love a day like today for a farm tour, but we run the tours rain or shine. The other thing we do is we run the tours all during the year. Our first instinct was to only run them at the height of the season when all this beautiful produce was coming in. But I think it's important for people to see what goes on a farm and the struggles and the challenges of those, say, first few weeks of January when all there is cabbage, just cabbage as far as the eye can see, that folks see that there are times when there are limits, but the farm still has to function. Tell listeners about some of your favorite resources. I'm talking about like books or maybe documentaries, or maybe are there some e-newsletters that you look forward to getting each week or each month?
There's some really good resources to learn more about food policy, including the Center for a Livable Future out of Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. They have kind of the clearinghouse for food policy resources and leadership resources as well. Another good group that focuses on food policy, but a little bit beyond too, is called the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition out of Washington, D.C. They produce a fantastic newsletter, and I would recommend anybody who wants to kind of follow what's happening at the federal level. That's a great resource because they kind of they message it in a way that anybody can, including myself, can understand it.
So we're going to link to all of that in the show notes so everyone knows where to go find all those resources. So I have a last question for you. What is the one thing someone can do today to support their local food system?
Well, I think it's important to just shop local, and that's, I know it's it kind of sounds like a cliche, but I'll tell you right now in Central Louisiana, if every household spent just $5 a week on food that's grown locally here in our region, our farmers would retain over $91 million. So there's nothing more important than supporting local farmers. And really, I think for people even beyond local food, for folks who are just want to find an easy way to support their local economy and their community, I can't think of a better way than just to support your local farmer. Go to a farmer's market, ask your grocery store to start carrying local food. I mean, just going out there and making it easier to find local food if you can't find it easily now, and just making sure to always try to purchase local food.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you.
Today, I'm here with Allison Guidroz. Allison and her husband, Grant, run Fullness Organic Farm here in Baton Rouge, literally smack inside the city limits of Baton Rouge. And they are part of a growing movement of small urban farmers. And they are doing some really interesting things on the farm. And I'm here to chat with her about what it means, what it looks like for folks to really support local. Hey, Allison.
Hey, Ann. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. First, I want you to tell the story of how you and Grant got involved with your small farm.
Okay, great. Yeah. So we really fell in love with growing food while undergraduates at LSU. I was working in community gardens and school gardens, and we took a class where the textbook was of this real famous farmer, Elliot Coleman. He's in Maine, and it was a husband and wife making a living on 5 acres. And Grant and I were dating at the time, and we kind of looked at each other and said, could a husband and wife make a living on a small-scale farm? And so that kind of started our pursuit. After graduating, we did 2 internships over 3 years working on farms. Really wanted to learn how to have the farm be a business, really have it be how we earned our income. Our internships were absolutely invaluable for our learning experience. We were both from Baton Rouge. When we worked at a farm in Arkansas, and we would just write and rewrite our business plan and read books, try to really figure out who we wanted the farm to be, who were we, what did we want it to look like, how are we going to produce. The overarching thing that we would say together is we want to grow the best food possible for our friends and family. So that kind of informed a lot of what we did. But one of the things it meant was coming back home and having a farm so we could provide our friends and family the best food we could grow. We came back to Baton Rouge. We didn't have any land, any family land. We didn't have a lot of money. We had a lot of different offers come up, which is something that's encouraging for people that are looking to farm, is that there are a lot of partnerships that we saw that could be formed from people that would really like to see this kind of agriculture happen. Our scale is so small that you don't need a whole lot. So we're only growing on 1.5 acres now, but there are a lot of partnerships that I think could happen. We've partnered with Mike Wampold, and he has a neighborhood called the Preserve at Harveston. This is kind of it's a growing trend to kind of have a farm be an amenity to a neighborhood. That's kind of part of what we're looking to do, is to add value to his neighborhood. And we also have gardens in the neighborhood too that the homeowners can rent out. We started our farm in 2015. In the summer of 2015, we broke ground, and then in October we started selling at the farmers market and to a couple restaurants that we had a good relationship with. We've just been growing since then. We've had more and more restaurants that are interested, in local shops like yourself. And we also have a CSA. It's called like Community Supported Agriculture, where people can. It's like a subscription where people pay up front and they get a weekly bag of whatever is fresh that week.
I want to back up a little bit and talk about your background. You didn't grow up on a farm.
No.
Did Grant grow up on a farm?
No.
Okay. So this is the same scenario that took place when I interviewed Galen Iverstein last season. I was like, Galen, tell us about your life on the farm. And he was like, well, I was a political science major.
Yep.
I was wondering if I should go to law school. I read Omnivore's Dilemma, and he and his dad bought land. And I think what his story and your story is probably a lot more common than what the media tells us of this. Of course, there are multi-generation farmers, but a lot of our newer farmers who aren't, say, large-scale commodity farmers are young business people, essentially, right? And everything you just described talks a lot to diversity, because let's just go through everything you talked about. You have your farm, you sell at the farmer's market, you have a CSA business. In addition to that, do you farm specifically for restaurants?
It's a definite partnership. We want to focus and grow what we know we're good at growing and not overpromise. Is one of the things that we've learned with restaurants is to make sure that you're not saying, yes, I can grow all the potatoes you'll use, or something that maybe you're not so good at. So if we say we can do something, it's something we're good at growing, but definitely our production has changed based on need.
Thinking of it from a business perspective, and that you need to have this diversity, that's what's really fascinating to me about you guys. And I want to go back to the neighborhood gardening that you're doing in the neighborhood here. What does that look like exactly for someone who lives there?
Yeah, so it's a really cool model. So they've put in a little over 60 box beds. They've just built a beautiful area, and they have shaded pavilions and seating area and things like that. But homeowners can rent out boxes. They're different sizes based on what they want, but the irrigation's all set up. We help with the soil nutrient assessment and everything, and then we go once a month as what we call garden coaches. And so we take seeds, we take plants, we take tools, and are just kind of there to help them along with the season and coach them along about what's the best thing to plant whatever week we're there.
You called it an amenity for that neighborhood. What did that take the place of? A golf course?
Exactly. There wasn't ever a golf course here, but that is the exact idea, that people that are going into these communities, first off, it's positioned where there are walking trails and common areas where you can know your neighbors, but that people that are going in these neighborhoods aren't playing golf, but the access to ponds or nature trails, just wooded areas, gardens. We also have a CSA drop-off in this neighborhood. All those kind of amenities are what people are looking for.
You said 60 beds in this neighborhood. How many are filled? What's the buy-in there? Are people really embracing it and joining you for it? Did you call it farm school or garden class?
Yeah, we call it, we say garden coaching when we go. But,
Gotcha.
But I like that, farm school. Yeah. So I would say probably half of the boxes are rented out. We've been doing it about a year. And so it's kind of slowly building, and the neighborhood's filling out too. They're still adding homes and all that kind of stuff. But now they're even building homes around the garden. So people if they like to be able to see the garden, can choose to have a home right around it. It's a neat model, and the first I've seen for sure in Baton Rouge. Mm-hmm. But Mike Wampold is known for being a real forward thinker. It's been a pleasure to partner with him.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk about your CSA.
Yeah.
Super familiar to me, but go ahead and just define what a CSA is.
Yeah, so CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And the whole idea is that the farm has a lot of upfront costs for the season, so seeds and fertilizer and all your inputs that go in the beginning of the season. The customers kind of buy into the farm in a way. We do a 16-week season is what we've done the past 2 seasons, and so they pay up front, and then they get a weekly bag of produce. And we waited a while before starting the CSA because we wanted to make sure that it was a really well-rounded CSA and not just stick people with kale every week or something. So we try to have a good mix. We try to do spring mix every week. That's kind of one of the things that we're known for is our salad greens. An allium, so that would be green onions or garlic or something like that. Something that can store a while, so maybe a root vegetable mix or winter squash or something like that. And then we like to have something that you can snack on right away. So in the summer, cherry tomatoes are great, or we often will partner with other farms. Like Inglewood, we would partner with Inglewood, which was one of the first farms we worked on that is an organic farm in Alexandria. And they grew a lot of strawberries, so partnering with other farms. Also, Mushroom Maggie is a farm that we've partnered with, and we'll do mushrooms once a month, and just make it be really transparent about if we do get it from somebody else, where it comes from and their practices, growing practices, and everything. And we send out an email with every week, have a little update about what's going on at the farm, recipes. Obviously say what's in the bag that week and a little description, because we grow a lot of things that you're used to and a handful of things that people may not be familiar with. So try to introduce new vegetables to them.
And I want to get to that in a minute because I want to talk about our farm tours
yeah.
that we do from Red Stick Spice, and we come to your farm because that's been interesting to watch. But touch a little bit more on your coordination with other farms, because that's interesting that, essentially you guys are competitors, but you also have I've noticed that a lot of farms are doing this and gotten to a place where it can also be super, mutually beneficial.
Yeah. My husband Grant has the term cooperation, and that's, I think, is a good summation of how we think. I mean, you would think that we're competitors, but we're not really competing with other local farms as far as the food dollar. There's such a small percentage of the overall population is actually going to local producers, and so we really have the view that we need more farmers. We don't worry about if another farmer has some, we get less. We need to make the pie bigger, because even I think about restaurants is an easy one to think about. Is there are a good subset of restaurants here in Baton Rouge that would really love to support local. There needs to be more of us to be able to really provide all their needs. The more local producers we have, the more businesses that we can't even dream up just sitting here could come just naturally.
Right.
And so that it's definitely not a fear of ours to try to push out other local farmers. And they're definite, at the market, there's really good camaraderie among producers. Yeah, we love working with other producers. And
you were talking about that it just makes the pie bigger. And it made me think of when I started teaching cooking classes. There was only a couple folks in town teaching cooking classes. And now all of a sudden everyone teaches cooking classes. And someone said, "Are you worried about it?" And I said, "No." Now all we've done is just raise the interest for cooking classes. And so I need to be really good at it so that they want to choose me. But no, I want more people interested in cooking classes. And I heard something similar years back when another farm started a CSA. There was a comment about that being competition to the farmers market, that was going to decrease folks going to the farmers market. And I said, well, actually, it's just going to make people more vegetable curious, and they're going to want more. They're like, I like what's in this box, but I need more. It's interesting what was Grant's term?
Cooperation.
Okay. We'll give him credit for that in show notes because I like that. But it's kind of like reframing just how you think of it and not thinking from such a place of scarcity that this is competition. But I do want to talk about what you said about the restaurants, because that's huge in Baton Rouge. People say, are they cooking with local produce? Is this local? And it sounds simple, and of course, it sounds so romantic. Like,
sure,
let's all eat local. But the truth is if the lion's share of those restaurants wanted to do that, our farms couldn't support it. Is that correct?
That's right. That's absolutely right.
It's important that folks understand that it's not about restaurants not wanting to do it.
Right.
It's that, it's just often not feasible.
We need more producers.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
In Arkansas, we delivered to 40 restaurants in Little Rock, and I got to see how many potatoes a restaurant is going through. One restaurant was going through 200 pounds of a certain size potato every week, and 50 pounds of yellow onions every week. And who's producing that locally? It's not happening. And that's just one restaurant. And so it's a supply issue more than a demand issue, because the demand is there and customers want it. Customers that are going to eat at these restaurants want it. And the restaurants themselves are looking for it and have been great to work with.
When you think about what you just said in terms of the demand being there, but the supply not being available, would you call that the biggest misconception when it comes to local food, or does anything else come to mind?
I think that's a big one, especially for people that want there to be local. I was recently at a conference and somebody was saying, it was in New Orleans, and they had a big Eat Local event, and they were saying, we just need to have more of these kinds of things. We just need to push people eating local more. We need to get big institutions buying local. And eventually I just spoke up, but it's like our local farms cannot supply one institution, so it's just, I think it is a very big misconception. There are small misconceptions about seasonality or what it takes, real day to day on the farm or things like that. But I think that would be one of the biggest misconceptions.
So you brought up a perfect point, because all I was thinking about was restaurants. I wasn't even thinking about universities and schools and hospitals. Those are huge amounts of food. Mm-hmm. And so the need for a lot more farmers is definitely there.
Yeah. Okay.
Another misconception, and you taught me this on our farm tour. Let's talk about Louisiana tomatoes. Because we all want that perfect Creole tomato in the summer. Mm-hmm. And to a degree, we get them. Mm-hmm. But talk to listeners about how you educated my farm tour on tomatoes, because that was such an eye-opener to me.
About the challenge of tomatoes?
Just that they're actually not the easiest thing to grow here.
Yes, absolutely. Especially with beginning growers. A lot of times that's what people think about wanting to have in their garden. And so I've just heard it so many times when people come in and say, I tried to grow tomatoes and they failed. And it's like, do you know how many of my tomatoes have failed? I mean, so many. It's just often with gardeners too, then they give up and they say, I don't have a green thumb and I can't grow it. But it really is one of the most challenging crops here to grow. If you've ever grown tomatoes, there are two kinds: determinate that stay a certain height, and then indeterminate that can just keep growing and can just get so unruly. So it's a whole lot of vegetation. If you don't sucker them, prune them properly, then the vegetation will get very, very thick, and then the leaves won't be able to dry out. And if you have those wet, warm environment, it just breeds disease. And then once the plants get weak a little bit, then the pests come in. It's just kind of nature's way of dealing with the weak plants is it puts out a chemical volatile that attracts these pests in. And so it's just like this whole cascade that can happen. And so on our farm, we plant them far apart, we trellis them up, we prune them really well. And we've also gone to just predominantly growing cherry tomatoes. They do well here. You have a less amount of time for them to get, the big ones just take longer to ripen up all the way. But absolutely, they're one of the most challenging crops to grow. But this time of year, once it's getting cooler, is a wonderful time to have a garden. So if people do want to have a garden, it's a great time for kale and Swiss chard and root vegetables and broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage. When school is starting, we think about the farm year starting for us too. And the summer as kind of most challenging and kind of just closing it up, have a few crops that do well, and then we really ramp back up for the fall production, fall, winter, spring production.
So talk to that person who's got that little raised bed, and they just put it in, and they want a tomato, but what's a better starting vegetable?
The greens are the best to start with, I would say. You can plant a kale plant in October, November, and it can go all the way through the fall, through the winter, into the spring. In the summer, it'll start suffering, but we have had kale plants that we've harvested off of for 9 months.
Stop it.
I know, they're so good. And you can just harvest the bottom leaves and leave the middle growing part going, and it gets taller and taller, and it looks silly by the end of it. It kind of looks like a kale palm tree. And other greens like that, mustards, collards, Swiss chard. Swiss chard does a little bit better when it's a little bit cooler. And then all the root vegetables are great to grow. Radishes are very easy and quick. Turnips are good. Beets are great. And the trick with having a home garden is to know that you've got enough sun, you've got good soil, and if you can, put it on the irrigation with a timer. So it's going to automatically water. But if you can get those 3 things, anybody could grow. And you're planting, right for the season. Anybody can grow. But it's the sunlight, the soil, and watering on time.
I love that. Okay, I am currently enrolled in a Food Fellows program with Central Louisiana Economic Development Alliance, CLEDA. They talk a lot about folks that are in vulnerable populations and live in food deserts. Here I am running these farm tours, and these are folks that don't have barriers to access. But I notice that when I'm trying to get to a place where those farm tours, that it can be meaningful for my customers to understand the challenges of local food in some areas. Tell me, so we load on the bus and we go to a variety of places and we stop by your farm and you give us a wonderful tour every time. And there have been some real light bulb moments during those tours. Tell me, when you see my customers coming off that bus to come and talk to you, tell me what that experience has been like.
I love showing people around the farm. I never know what people's expectations of a farm, what they are, but if it's kids, they want to know where the animals are.
Where's your cows?
Yeah. Show me the chickens, which we might just have to get some so we can show when the kids come.
You need an attraction.
Yeah. But I always enjoy showing folks around, and oftentimes your group that's coming are bought in to the local food movement. And so just from their expressions, from their questions, I can just tell that they're interested, they're supportive. It's just a pleasure. I always like to see people interact with a garden, from kids to adults, and it's always neat to see people interact and across the board, people are drawn to the garden. Like I said, I really got my start working in community gardens in Old South Baton Rouge, seeing young kids work in the garden and how they had no fear about trying things from the garden, especially if they had the hand in production. And I can't tell you how many kids I saw eat a dirty radish and like it. And, I mean, radishes don't just taste, it's not a sweet strawberry, but I think it's ingrained in us. Good food is just something that's really not far back in our history of, like you're saying, we didn't grow up on a farm, but our grandparents had farm, maybe they didn't have a farm, but they had a garden and they cooked everything. And it's just really in all of our histories, growing your own food, preparing it, eating it with friends and family around a table, everybody is drawn to it. And so it's been really neat to just see people across the board kind of just have the feeling of like, I don't know why I want to just be in this garden, but I just want to can I put my hands in the dirt, or can I eat this tomato straight from the vine? And
no, it happens on every trip. They ask, can I eat this?
They just want to interact with it. It's so fun to watch. And it happened to me too. And it happened to Grant too. This is just amazing. And it's amazing to watch something grow, and it's amazing to harvest it, and definitely to share it with people you care about.
I love that. That so speaks to what we do in the shop too. I interviewed John Cottondine with Cleta yesterday for the podcast, and he gave me a quote that I made him write it down because I was like, I could not have heard that correctly. If every household in central Louisiana spent just $5 a week on local food in his 10-parish region, those central Louisiana farmers would retain $91 million annually. That made me realize that it is about small, incremental changes. How does that sit with you in terms of being a small farmer? Is it those repeated small purchases that keep you guys at a place where you can keep going?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's individual families choosing to do the harder thing, to come down to the market on Saturday and to shop with us. And it absolutely makes a difference. Everybody that comes to shop with us, we thank him for coming. Thank you for supporting us. And it's always a fun interaction to say, thank you so much for coming out. And so often we'll have the serious, no, thank you. And it really creates a really a wonderful relationship. But one thing that we heard for a farm with our scale, that you really need 200 families to support you. Like you said, we grow in the city. I mean, there are 200 families surrounding our farm. Right on the three sides of our farm, there might be 200 families. Again, it goes to, we need more producers. It's been interesting to see through the years. We used to help sell at the farmer's market with another farm before starting our own, and the customer base is different. I mean, the knowledge of the people that come to shop at the farmer's market, before there was a lot more education about why to shop locally or the benefits. And now we kind of see customers telling us why this is so important. So I think there really has been a shift with people like you, with documentaries out there, with trends around the country. And, I often say that we're just kind of behind the times all around here in Louisiana, but that comes with benefits if you're wanting to do something a little different, or in our case, wanting to farm. We have the benefit of being able to see what's worked well for other farms around the country and not reinvent the wheel. Really, we're really thankful for the reception we've gotten here.
One thing I say when people come in my shop and they either shop or take a cooking class and they're like, this is amazing. I didn't know you were here, that sort of thing. I'm like, tell your friends. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we want everyone to tell their friends
Absolutely.
About local farms, your farm, the farmer's market. But if someone wanted to connect with local food right now, what is one small thing they could do to help make that connection?
Definitely coming to the market on Saturday. Saturday mornings, 8 to 12 every Saturday. You'll actually get to see the faces of the producers that are growing the food. You'll walk through and see what is really seasonal here. Your dollar makes a big difference for a farm. So supporting the farmers directly or finding the restaurants that are supporting farmers and supporting them. I would encourage people too to grow a garden. And I think something that we've seen too is that when people eat good food, it's like they crave it again. I mean, we've had times when people come to the market. I mean, every week there's something that somebody is really wanting that we don't have, so it happens pretty much every week where, where's your arugula? You sold out of arugula or something. But it's like when you taste that good quality food, your body really craves it. And so I would say start eating the best food you can. And it has so many good repercussions.
I love that. Okay, so we move into a cooking segment after our interviews. So I need to know what's growing at Fullness right now.
So we still have some of the summer vegetables in the ground, like eggplants and peppers and okra.
All right, I think we're going to tackle some eggplant.
Cool.
All right, this is perfect. I hope this interview left you making plans to go to your farmer's market, because I want you to know that really does make a difference. But we are ready to cook up those eggplant burgers, and I am grabbing our Farm Stand Veggie Blend. This blend has some delicious dried herbs in it. It's super, super savory. It's got a little bit of cumin in it, and it's got a little bit of heat. I love it on roasted vegetables. It's fantastic on chicken. So it's a great all-purpose blend that brings a nice, bright, herby flavor to whatever you might be cooking. You're definitely going to need a little bit of fat in these burgers, and you have lots of choices. We love our avocado oil. We have several flavors. You could go with our roasted garlic or toasted onion, or you can move over to an olive oil and use our garlic extra virgin olive oil. And another one that would be fantastic with the Farm Stand Veggie Blend would be our Italian herbs olive oil. Just kind of up that herb game in those burgers. So Farm Stand Veggie Blend and one of our flavored oils, this is your solution to those veggies getting boring. So you can find Farm Stand Veggie Blend, all of our avocado oils, and our olive oils at redstickspice.com, and also at our Jefferson Highway location in Baton Rouge and downtown on Main Street. Just for Smidgen listeners, use code Smidgen15 at checkout in the promotional code box, and you will save 15% on your entire purchase. Let's head to the kitchen. Okay, and we're back. Welcome to Smidgen. We are to the cooking segment of Smidgen. We just wrapped up an interview with Allison Guidroz with Fullness Farm, and we're back at Red Stick Spice Company. We're here in my shop on Jefferson Highway in Baton Rouge. We're in the test kitchen with Cameron. Store's open, customers are here, a lot of fun today. We also have a live audience. This is podcast live. So we've got some friends with us in the audience who are watching the process. They're immersed with all warts and all. They're seeing it all. So we're excited that you guys are here. So we are cooking veggies today because, like I said, we talked to Allison at Fullness, and I got my brain filled with how a great way to approach local food. So before I talk about what we're making, let's get you started on this garlic, because we need 3 cloves of minced garlic for this meat hamburger filling. So this recipe is on our website already. It's just a meatball. We're turning it into a hamburger today, and we've flipped the seasonings a bit. So we need 3 cloves of garlic, and not my favorite task in the kitchen. It's sticky. It's really no magic to it, but he's just going to cut and then just go over and over and over until he gets a nice fine mince. I want to make sure they're broken down a good bit. They're going in the food processor, but they're not going to get much chopping action. So we don't want someone to get a big bite of garlic. So what we've done already is roasted our eggplant, and we are at a point in the season where I thought there were no more eggplant, with it being a summer vegetable. And here we are with eggplant, and that was one of the big things I learned from Allison is they are harvesting summer vegetables a lot longer. When we want pumpkins, they're still harvesting some summer vegetables. And so I said, you know what? And she said, and they're kind of a hard sell because people are, it's a new season. And I was like, you know what? We're going to tackle this eggplant. She's still got eggplant, and we're going to use them.
Let's do it.
So I roasted them. We cut them in cubes, and we salted them, and we let them sit for a while, at least 30 minutes. And so you've done this in class with us a bunch when we make the smoky baba ganoush. An eggplant is naturally bitter. It's just part of the nature of the vegetable, and the salt helps draw out some of that bitterness. We salted it and then patted it dry, and then seasoned it with our farm stand veggie blend, which is an excellent blend for all types of vegetables. I love it. I love it whisked into a vinaigrette. It's really, really good. Nice. We're going to pulse this eggplant in our food processor, and we've got all these other ingredients. We've got quite a bit of breadcrumbs. We've got parm coming in and an egg and the garlic. With that amount of egg breadcrumbs going in, I want to make sure we've got flavor at the end. And the way I do that is we roast it with the spice blend. We roast it and we taste it and make sure. Very full flavored. The farm stand veggie is there in full force. It is bordering on being salty, which we shouldn't concern ourselves with it because we're going to be knocking it back with this amount of breadcrumbs. This is a great way to give you an idea of what your end result is going to taste like when you have a mixed dish like this, especially something that has raw egg that you may not want to taste later.
Right.
Is make sure you're seasoning your base ingredient first and taste it and make sure your flavor's there. I could always add a little farmstead veggie blend in here or even more salt, but we're there. This blend has really great flavor. All right, so let's pulse this. Let's get this in our food processor. And this was actually two large eggplant, and these were split between 2 sheet pans. We combined them now that they're roasted, but you wouldn't want to roast this amount of eggplant on 1 sheet pan. All you're going to do is boil it. So that liquid's going to come out of there, and it's just going to steam and boil, and that's no good. All right, let's get all of that in there. And then you can take a farm. We take customers on a farm tour here. It's a full day with me and Lily on a bus in a small enclosed space, which super fun. And you've come on one of them with us, and you visited Allison's farm.
Yeah.
How big is it?
It's like only 1 acre.
It's not even an acre.
Not even an acre?
It's tiny. It's a modest-sized backyard. It was mind-blowing to me how much produce they get out of that little place. But, yeah, super fun. Okay, let's judge that. And I would stop, maybe a couple of more pulses. We want to leave a little bit of the integrity of the eggplant.
Okay.
We want to have a little bit of a meaty bite, so not take it completely down to a puree. So let's get that in our bowl, and then we're going to get all of our other ingredients in. So what's your favorite vegetable?
Favorite vegetable? Can't say it's eggplant.
Okay.
But you're going to try to change my mind today. I already know.
Yes.
Big Brussels sprout fan. Crispy, ashy Brussels sprouts in the oven.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong.
Yeah. And what oil and blend are you putting on those?
I'm a big just salt and pepper fan on those. I'm a big balsamic drizzler. If you put bacon in it, I'm happy.
Oh, wow. Nice. Okay. In goes our breadcrumbs. Let's get our garlic in there. We've got parm going in, which is going to bring some fat and saltiness to it. So we have left the world of vegans with our cheese and eggs. My daughter was a vegan. Emma was a vegan. She turned vegan when she was 16. I figured 2 weeks we'd be, back to chicken nuggets, and she hung in there for 2 years. So we dug in and learned how to prepare food, vegan food, rather than just going and finding grocery store processed food that was vegan. We learned how to prepare the food. I would say of all my culinary experience, Emma's stint as a vegan was my biggest learning curve. So in goes the egg. She did convert to vegetarianism, which opens up a whole new world. But I can say that veganism is absolutely doable. If this were vegan, we would not have the egg in there. We might make a flax egg, but we might get away with not having an egg at all in this. What's going in for our cheese?
Parmesan?
No. If we can't have cheese, if we're vegan, what's
nutritional yeast?
Nutritional yeast. So that, and we've actually done that with this recipe because this is a meatball recipe on our website, and we've subbed out nutritional yeast because we found out we were out of parm. So I'm going to crank my heat up here and get our brand new caramelized onion avocado oil in the pan and get some fat in there. And we are going to form 2 burgers. Let's see what size we want them. you're not going to have a ton of shrinkage here. We can
Right.
pretty much aim for the size of our bun. Let's see what we think of something right about there.
Okay.
All right, our oil is smoking.
And also, these must cook pretty quickly because there's nothing raw in here to really cook, except for the egg.
The egg, yeah. So let's get those down in the pan. I am going to pop our heat down a little bit so we don't smoke that oil. But we want to get these brown, nice and beautiful golden brown on one side. I always think about our presentation side,
Right.
and I'm not that concerned about my other side. So I want to get these beautiful golden brown on one side, flip them, and continue cooking them in the pan. But let's say we had lots and lots of burgers to make. We could flip them right onto a sheet pan and go into a 350 oven. Let them continue cooking there and then continue with our first passes here. You could totally cook these on the sheet pan from beginning to end. You just wouldn't get a great
That
color. You know, they would taste delicious, but we eat with our eyes first, and we want that beautiful brown color on there. So we're going to brown those. And then let's talk about our condiments for this, because we're kind of approaching this like eggplant parm.
Right.
Eggplant parm is typically eggplant and a tomato sauce. So we wanted to top it with something with tomatoes that gave us that same kind of, kept us in that same world as eggplant parm. So tell everyone about, these are the slow roasted tomatoes that you made yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us how those come together. How many times have you made the slow roasted tomatoes in the Red Stick Spice kitchen
At
for
least
cooking fun?
100.
Yeah. They are our go-to.
Yeah.
So that ends up being a condiment that we use on so many things. We can use them on cheese boards. We use them as toppings. They keep well in the refrigerator, and they're absolutely delicious. So take us through what goes into those, to that little bowl of beautiful roasted tomatoes.
Yeah, so pretty much you just get like a sheet pan with high sides, and you just throw in the balsamic and the oil and lots of fresh herbs, rosemary, basil, and some garlic cloves. Throw them in the oven, and they get kind of like the charred, crackly tomato skin on the outside.
And we're talking about grape tomatoes.
Correct.
Cherry tomatoes.
Yes.
Here in Louisiana, we get bumper crops of cherry tomatoes in the summer. They're also available throughout the year at the grocery store. And that is a good 2 hours in a low, slow oven to get them. They get jammy. It gets really, really thick and spoonable and delicious. If you wanted to speed it up a little, you need to cut all those little cherry tomatoes in half, and that'll just get you moving faster. But we mix and match the oils and vinegars here in the store. Just grab handfuls of herbs that we have on hand, and they're super sweet and just like amazing to have on hand.
Indeed.
Okay, our burgers are GBD, golden brown and delicious. They look great. They're just finishing up cooking, so let's get our mozzarella cheese melted on here. And let's remind ourselves of those components of that eggplant parm. So we need tomato sauce, and what else?
Cheese, we got check, and herbs too.
Basil. Yeah, so we've got 2 beautiful basil leaves. Let's let this melt for a minute. You get that basil chopped, fancy word, chiffonade, roll it up like a cigar, and then get it chopped into strips, and then we will garnish this burger. That looks great. All right, so here I come with this burger. God, it smells wonderful. I smell the cumin in the farm stand veggie. I smell oregano. That smells amazing. It smells meaty, you know. I think the eggplant does a good job of subbing in when you want something meaty. I think a lot of times the go-to is a portobello mushroom. Don't you find that a lot with vegetarian and vegan cooking? Which is fine and delicious, but this could be just as good of a meaty stand-in for that. Okay, so let's get a dollop of our slow roasted tomatoes on there. Let's do a bigger dollop. All right, and let's hit it with that basil.
Okay.
What? That is gorgeous. And then top it with our bun. And then you and I need to take a bite. Okay. So definitely.
I like that it's not sliding everywhere.
Yeah. Holding up, perfect shape. So grab yourself a quarter. Let's see how we did.
That was pretty good.
Come on.
Yeah,
Did I win you over?
indeed. And I think even I don't taste the eggplant at all, but if you had a 7-year-old kid who did, those tomatoes cover up everything.
Yeah, they're sweet.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then fresh basil. You know what? That farm stand veggie's got a little heat to it. It's nice. I really like that. That's really good. We did a good job. All right, Emma,
Indeed.
to my daughter, the vegetarian, we've got a new dish for you. Well done. Thanks, Cameron.
Thank you.
This was fun.
Indeed.
Thanks, everyone.
Well, there you have it. That's how you turn a non-eggplant eater into an eggplant eater. We turned it around for Cameron. Thanks also to Allison Guidroz with Fullness Farm and John Cottondine with Cleta for being on Smidgen. Smidgen is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and now on Pandora. So exciting! Subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. Everything about Red Stick Spice is at redstickspice.com, and you can also find out everything Smidgen at smidgenpodcast.com, where you'll find our show notes with links to everything we talked about. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode. Bye!